Hi, welcome back to the conversation. I'm Tammy. This is Tracy. We have Molly and Nolan, and we have a new friend, Shauna, here at the table with us. Welcome, Shauna.
Thank you.
Yeah. Molly, would you like to give us a recap of Dr. Basey's message?
Yes, I would. So, as you just watched, we are in the psychoeducation, and we are in Amygdala Part 2, talking about bottom-up anxiety. So this is going to look a little bit different. Bottom-up anxiety is whenever your past invades your present. And this is going to happen through your sensations that fire in your amygdala that send the warning signal in your brain. So you could be walking around and feel, see, hear, taste something that causes that smoke detector in your brain, your amygdala, to go off and fire that says danger, danger, danger. And this is going to be through sensations. And so this is how it's different than top down, which is where you think it, and then it kind of produces those anxiety and those chemicals. And bottom up is whenever you're just living your normal life and something happens through a sensation that signals, danger.
That's right. And it can send us into something Dr. Basey talked about, which is fight, flight, freeze. It can also look like overcompliance, or what some people call fawning. So those are important terms to know. That way, as you're walking through that, if you feel that you're doing one of those things, it's sort of a trigger to realize something is off or something is amiss.
So with that, Shauna, what has your experience been like with bottom-up anxiety?
Yes, well, I would say it was the freeze response to that my amygdala was firing. I realized one night when I was in bed sleeping that I was holding my breath and frozen in the same position, not moving on purpose. And every person in the house was asleep. The dog was asleep. We were safe. Nothing was happening. And so that's when I knew that this isn't right. This isn't natural. And so I asked Jesus, what is this all about? And he showed me my childhood bedroom. And I was in my bed, frozen, holding my breath, not moving, because my parents were fighting outside of the house. My door was shut. And they fought every night. My dad was physically abusive to my mom, and I was terrified that he would come through my door. Mm-hmm. And so that was the scene that Jesus took me back to. And when I asked him, "Where were you, Jesus?" he showed me on the other side of the door. He was standing there holding a sword. Mm-hmm. And guarding my room.
Wow. Yeah.
And he just told me it wasn't anything you did. It wasn't from freezing that kept you safe. It wasn't from holding your breath, being so still and not making noise. It was me all along. He also showed me my room in the daytime, and just he reminded me of his presence with me there and how much fun we had and all of the, imaginative play and things and just freedom and creativity that he kind of fostered there with me. So that's my example of bottom up anxiety. And so thinking back, once he revealed that to me and showed me that that's where that was coming from, thinking back, I think every night I would have anxiety, but not really be aware of it, that it was happening. And it was like I just wanted everybody to go to bed, lights out, to kind of make the situation kind of that control the situation so that I would be safe. And now I know that he's the one that protects me and keeps me safe and guards me. And so a practical way, I wanted something at night because I know it's a walking out process. Mm-hmm. So once this started, to walk it out every night, I knew I needed his word, something specific to help me with this. And so he directed me to Psalm 121, the Passion Translation, which it just paints a clear picture of what he showed me, and it makes it real. Mm-hmm. So I'll just read it. I look up to the mountains and hills, longing for God's help. But then I realize that our true help protection is only from the Lord, our Creator who made the heavens and the earth. He will guard and guide me, never letting me stumble or fall. God is my keeper. He will never forget nor ignore me. He will never slumber nor sleep. He is the guardian God for his people Israel. Yahweh himself will watch over you. He's always at your side to shelter you safely in his presence. He's protecting you from all danger, both day and night.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
That is really neat.
Yeah, it's a really great example of like, you're like the star pupil. Like it's all the things, like you realized that your amygdala was firing. You sat in it for a minute. You stayed present so that you could stay regulated, so you could explore what was going on. And then you went on to reframe that. And then what I like the step that Jesus did with you was he gave you a reminder of the beautiful sensations. So it's like he didn't just deal with the memory, because that would have been good, but then he gave you that imaginative play and what it felt like to be in your room as a child, so that when you're laying in bed at night, that's not only the memory that you're going to have, but the sensation of being cared for and loved that you will feel. He is so faithful to hit every detail, and it's really neat that you walked through all of those steps with him.
So have you been, have you seen it creep up again, or do you feel like it was one of those things where it just, once you had that revelation?
I don't think it was, it's kind of, I think it's periodic. I'll feel it kind of creep up again. And that's my reminder. Oh, and I literally picture this verse, that guardian God, and he walks me through that I don't look to a circumstance. I don't look to that everything's quiet to be okay. He is my guardian and he protects me. So yes, it is something that will creep up, but I have that tool and reminder that he gave me.
Yeah.
So
and
you can
it's
start
deep
that.
because like, I know in Dr. Lori, whenever she's talking about bottom up, like whenever you're young as a kid, you don't have the intellectual portion of your brain to give you a narrative.
Right.
So all your brain is remembering is the sensations and the feelings of somewhere it was wired together. I'm getting ready for bed. I'm in danger.
Yeah.
And those two things were partnered. But then how cool that as an adult, like you would put the things in place to then be able to recognize, like, hold on, I've done this for a while now. It looks like something might be off. Could this be an invitation into healing? Like rather than just the noise of I want to escape, I don't want to feel that, or I don't know what it is, so it could be scary, but to just say, oh, this is just an invitation from the Lord because he wants to set me free.
That's that practice of activating, staying present in the moment, that whole regulation about taking a deep breath, being here and now in the present, and then investigating whatever the sensation or whatever the memory is. And so you probably had done that in other areas. Was that the first time you had ever done that with Jesus, or you had?
No, I've done that before, as far as just asking, what is this about? I think I've always had a connection with him of asking questions and
being inquisitive with him.
This seemed to be, it was something that happened that having gone through all of this, the material that I knew, okay, I was able to actually put things in practice.
Recognize it.
Yes, and recognize it and then kind of go through the steps, so to speak. And it worked.
And it worked. It was fabulous.
Jesus showed up.
He helped you resolve those emotions and feelings. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Does anybody else have a reframing story?
Well, I was going to say actually, if you stay tuned for after the episode testimonies, you'll hear some more of this example. But my daughter had gone through a traumatic event with a perpetrator. And so when she had actually reframed and been healed from the situation. But there was one day where she did see a picture of him, and she started crying, and she thought she'd been healed from that. She had reframed it, and it really bothered her. And of course, it kind of bothered me too because I'm her mom. And so we, immediately we I investigated it, not even realizing that that's exactly what I was doing. But what do you think this is? Do you think we need to explore this further? And she said, no, a lot of things have come up since, and it really hasn't bothered me. I don't know why that hit me differently, but it did. But I'm okay. And we prayed through it. And it was just sharing that with Dr. Lori. She was just reiterating, well, that you did exactly what you're supposed to do. Sometimes when it happens, it just means look into it, explore it, investigate it when you're activated, and then move forward. And once you're regulated, investigate. And if it's nothing to do, you don't need to go any further with it. That's okay. It's that, are you able to, if something pops up, regulate yourself and just make sure you're all clear. So, and the chirpy experience for me, the story she tells about chirpy, it can be something that's super traumatic, like that story with my daughter, or it could just be something as minor as, God created us to live an abundant life and be excited and have a zest and expectation of good things to happen and excitement for life. And all of a sudden we just feel like things are dull and not fun. And why is that? And I want to explore that and figure out why it is that that's not quite right. And I'm not sure what it is. So let me have some prayer and figure out what that is. It could be anything. I've even heard stories from friends who've said they didn't know why they reacted to police officers or security guards when they go through a gate, and it's kind of gone, as they've explored that, it's gone back to an authority figure in their life that has been, was not healthy. So it's just anything that's hindering you from living the abundant life that God created us to have. He wants you to cast all that stuff off so that you can run the race set before you.
That happened to me just probably 2 weeks ago. I was in a team meeting with my safe people I trust. And I was sharing an idea, and a teammate said something that should not have been a triggering thing, but it triggered me into a freeze. I was absolutely frozen. And she was like, go ahead and finish saying what you were going to say. And I went, she was like, no, go ahead and say it. Like, I literally had 0 words, and you know me, I don't usually have 0 words. Right. And so I was like, what is happening? Like in my head, I'm like, what is happening? What is going on inside of me? I cannot figure this out. And so Jesus and I just had to have a conversation about it that night. And it was an instant, he took me right back to the 4th grade. I was working on the chalkboard and I got a problem wrong. And the teacher said something that was hurtful. And I thought from then on, anybody who doesn't agree with me in public, then they think I'm stupid. And it was really hard to take. And then I just asked Jesus, what's the truth? And, once he speaks the truth over that situation, it completely changes. And the next assignment that Jesus had for me, I needed to be able to take public ridicule. I needed to be able to hear different ideas and not take it so into my heart. And so he gave me that opportunity to reframe a situation and a hurt that happened so long ago that wasn't anything, it shouldn't have been anything traumatic, but it would cause me to not be able to go forward in the plan that he had for me. So I'm really thankful that he will do that for us, even in the little things like that, not super traumatic.
So cool. Because as you're beginning to heal and get restoration and break free, sometimes even words that have been spoken over you, that they were not meant to be hurtful in the past, and you took that on as your identity. And then if someone says it again, it really, oh my gosh. And I mean, all of a sudden you're like, that was pre-restoration. I'm restored now. And you get really triggered. You don't know why. And you got to go back. Wait a minute. Why did that really bother me? And go back and make sure that you remember exactly who God says you are.
Yeah. But I just want to, when I'm back at home again, I'm in a safe place. But as soon as I would think, my mind actually wanted to ruminate on what she said, what I said, what I meant to say, what should have been said. You know what I'm saying? All those things, there is a physical reaction that's going on. It's not just when it's bottom up, you're feeling it in your gut. You're feeling it in your caught breath, your breath is just right here and it's heavy, or a headache, maybe a headache comes on, tension in your shoulders. I mean, it is a physical response to something that at the time I didn't even have obviously no words for. And so, but even when I wasn't in that moment, but I was at home and I was thinking about it, the physical reaction was still the same. And until Jesus reframed that with me, then I can think on it and I get happy. I'm so excited that I had a teammate that would walk through it with me. I'm so thankful that I have a Jesus that would show me the truth and show me what he really thinks, and that he's got another assignment for me, So it's just win, win, win.
And it becomes post-traumatic growth.
That's right. Post-traumatic growth, not the post-traumatic stress or disorder.
Well, and I think we've worked with so many that it's not even necessarily the trauma they endured, but they're suffering from that secondary trauma, and they're still going through all of those same things and having those same reactions, just like they walked through it themselves. And so, for this course especially, I mean, this can change everything, no matter what level. If we were going to try to put trauma on a level,
Right.
it can help anybody if they just will trust Jesus with it and
even
recognize.
Even now, like in today's culture and in today's society, the world is so small. So with advances in technology, the fact that we can get on our phones or whatever and see what's happening thousands of miles away, so if there's a natural disaster, what's on the news? And if there's something horrible that happened right down the street or in the next city over, what's on the news? And then you have people who are videotaping it and who are there and posting things all over social media. And what is that doing to us? Because then we sit there and we watch it and we put ourselves in it like natural human nature. And then we're like, oh no, we're giving ourselves all of this secondary PTSD that was never meant for us to carry. And so and I think about it on a spiritual level, and it's like Satan and the world is happy to tell us what to think about, or is happy to fill our minds with whatever to get us out of whack. Because if any of us would have stayed in that traumatic place, no one would be doing anything ever. Because then we sit in it and then we blame the people around. Well, if they would only change, or if they would only meet my unhealthy, toxic needs so that I can be healthy.
Quite frankly, I just think, obviously on this side of eternity, we're going to take hard knocks. We're going to be banged around. And sometimes it could be something, physically painful or violent, but sometimes it's things like, even from other Christians, church wounds and hurts and hurtful things said and it just gossip or slander or, anything. And it that happened to you or a spouse or a friend. And it's just any of that stuff, if we don't get healing from it, it takes us out for the, like you were just saying, for the long haul. We can't operate in our destiny and do what God wants us to be able to do because we're wounded. And so those things need to be healed so that we can live out our destiny and our calling.
Just pride. If we're so self-focused,
I want to hold on to that wound. I want to hang on to it. It's become my identity. And I'm angry. And quite frankly, I don't want to forgive.
Right. Or I don't want to work through it. I don't want to be healed.
And when we stay in that place of what would be dysregulation, when we're holding on to that and it's washing over our emotions, it really dampens our ability to sense the Holy Spirit. I really feel like the Holy Spirit sort of has this light feather touch sometimes. And when we're dysregulated, he could put a brick on our head and we can't notice it, I mean, so the whole point is not just so we have great mental health. I want us to have great mental health, but the point of being regulated and to not let the bottom and the past invade our present is so that we can be fully alive, present, and available to what Jesus wants to do right now in this moment. And when we're dysregulated, it dampens our abilities to sense him, to hear him, to feel him, and to know him. Thus, we don't get where we need to go, do what we need to do.
And when I think about, the nighttime thing of sleeping, how many dreams and visions from him that may not have been receptive to, bound up, in that frozen state, rather than just expecting, all right, let's play and good night,
Yes. Yeah.
So
that's really beautiful.
Yeah. it hinders relationship. And if we're meant for relationship with him and we're still stuck in our self-focused wound, we'll miss it.
Which is so neat that we know what we know now about the brain and that you can be healed from these things. And it's not just, this is something that happened to me, or this person died, or this person, hurt me, or, I got physically abused, or that doesn't have to become part of your identity, and that you can heal from that. And that one event does not have to wipe you out.
That's right.
And that's just really neat. It's a freedom event.
That's right.
And can we thank our brains that they did do what they were supposed to do?
At
So
the
I just
time,
don't want it to be like a condemning thing of you're bad because you behaved this way. But that was the very thing that got you through before you had a narrative or before you knew how to regulate yourself. So that's the very thing. That means that you were alive and your brain was working exactly how it was supposed to. So instead of just I know I walked through a season when I first came to No Boundaries and started doing CPR, literally everything, I get so mad at my own brain. And then you just feel like you're at war with yourself. Yeah. Because I'm why aren't you working? And then you get Tammy Hayworth, who's actually, great job. Your brain is working beautifully, and here's why. But until you can really sit down and understand, this is how I was created. This is how my brain was wired. This is how it develops. This is the brain basics. But that was then, and this is now. And so giving yourself a little bit of a break in that.
And recognizing a beautiful God that will give you that invitation. That's where you were. I'm so glad your brain did that, but you don't have to stay there.
Yes. But you don't have to stay there.
Yeah, because it's incredible to think that he gave us that to survive, and that it kicks in when we don't feel like it's gonna. It's incredible. I think about, my husband was a soldier for many years, and with all the turmoil in our country, he was consumed by the news, and we noticed the shift in his attitude, and he was getting really short with people, and he's I just don't know what's happening. And so we were able to ask Jesus about that, and he realized that he was kind of going back into those moments of soldier, and he was I have to know what's happening. I have to know what's coming. And I said, why?
Yeah.
Why do we have to know if we know the one that does?
Amen.
And he just looked at me I don't know.
I can let that go, right?
You can let that go. And so for that soldier mentality, that was a real struggle for him to even recognize there was an issue and then to let it go.
Yeah.
I'm glad he had you to help him.
Me too.
So Tammy, will you what is regulation? So we brought that up a lot, but say I'm in the middle of a moment and I can feel my lid being flipped and my smoke alarm, Lama ding dong, is sending all the signals. I've got 1,000 chemicals that are going to be unhealthy. How do I calm myself down?
Okay. So what you just described, lid flipping, everything's happening, that's what we call dysregulation.
Oh.
And so in dysregulation, that's when your heart rate is beating really high. Maybe you're super vigilant with looking around like he was being vigilant about the news. You might freeze and not move at all. You might be over compliant. So what's happening is your body is experiencing something telling you that it is dangerous and you need to somehow get yourself safe. So that's dysregulation. Okay. So regulation is when you're going up and down and you're able to adapt to the stimulus that's around you. So you get information into your body, you've watched the news and you're able to say, oh, that's a bad thing, but I think things will turn out okay. And your heart rate comes back down and you're able to adapt to this sensory information coming in around you. When dysregulation happens, sensory information comes in and you can no longer handle it. So then you go into the fight, flight, or freeze reflex versus being able to adapt or make responsive decisions instead of just a reactive decision. So whatever arises, you can see it, analyze it, and respond to it in an appropriate way.
So, and then no new learning no new learning can happen in dysregulation.
That's right, because your lid is flipped. Your thinking brain is turned off
no
at that
intellect.
point. That's right. Everything's going to be in that feeling, emotion part of your brain. So that's why no new learning can happen. I mean, you might learn to feel something different. You know what I'm saying? But you won't have a narrative to it. You won't be able to really explain it or give detailed verbiage about it.
And
so that's
think about that episode in Steel Magnolias, if you ever saw it. But it's like you can tell it to your mind, but you can't tell it to your heart. You don't know why rationally. You shouldn't be acting this way, but I just can't make it's in, like you were saying, your body feels that you've got no control. You're just overtaken with the feelings.
And it takes time to come back to a regulated state after you've sent all those cortisol hormones and everything through your body. It takes a while to come back down. And that's a really good thing to know, actually. That way, once your lid's been flipped, you can be kind to yourself and take a deep breath and know, okay, my heart rate is still really high, but it's because, and next will happen. So you can kind of start to reason your brain back down. If you are expecting it and you're giving yourself a break, then you can kind of get yourself back into regulation.
And that's what we saw with Shauna's story. So you felt yourself freeze and you felt yourself like not breathing and being very, very still. So that would be dysregulation. And then to regulate herself you looked around and you said, nothing's not safe. Brain, like there's nothing out of the ordinary. So that's an example of her then regulating. And then she got to go investigate with Jesus of then what was going on.
Yes.
Really good.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think you probably had some practice with self-exploration and what it feels like to be calm and what it feels like to be regulated and what it feels like to be centered. Is that true?
Yes.
So then when you had a time and you were experiencing dysregulation, remember I said you have to build in a pause. So because you had been practicing what regulation feels like, when regulation left and you only have about 3 to 7 seconds, honestly, before your lid flips. So you have just a pause of time to start the investigation process, or to start the regulation process. And probably in other nights and other times, you just went straight into freeze and you didn't catch it. And so part of the process is learning those little steps of what it feels like to be peaceful, to be restful, to be centered. So when that starts slipping away, you notice versus it's suddenly gone.
Yes. And that was a process of connecting with self, connection, of what do I feel like when I'm at peace? What is going on in my body, my thoughts, my heart? What are those sensations and emotions? Healthy emotions versus, well, that didn't go so well. Just a process of figuring it out.
Yes, and it's important to build in that pause and sort of give yourself a moment to be able to catch it. And it does just take time and practice. So.
And so what are some things you can do when you're dysregulated to try to regulate yourself?
I personally, something that I always do, my husband kind of makes fun of me about this, but I'll just tell y'all anyway. I ask Jesus to help me right away. So whatever it is, I drop something. Oh, Jesus, help me. And I'm truly asking him, I can't find something. Jesus, can you help me? So I've built a muscle memory habit. So when my lid is trying to flip, my natural reaction is to ask Jesus to help me. So I've actually gone from my lid flipping. I just take a deep breath. And when I'm speaking, I'm activating my vagus nerve and I'm doing things to my body that's helping my brain come back online. And I'm actually calling on the God of the universe to help me. So it's all those things. That's what I do. And we have found ourselves in some sticky situations. And my husband has been about to lose it. And just out of habit, I just called out for Jesus to help me. And instantly he gave me this really great idea and I was able to save the day. Wow. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
So things that you can do to activate your vagus nerve, deep breathing, looking around the room like you did, thinking about the here and now, and doing that on a regular basis, connecting with yourself, knowing what it feels like. So you're building in that pause, if that is helpful.
I go to the grounding, that's I think when I'm dysregulated, my go-to is check out or just go somewhere else entirely, just not be present. But when you're not present, you miss a lot of things that he wants to offer you. Like, we're made to be present. So I know for me, I'll immediately just start doing the I Spy, counting, and then feeling. So like, I feel my feet on the floor. I feel the chair against my back, like things like that keep me calm, because it's normally that thing that's fired that's saying, okay, now go check out, and then who knows what happens after that.
Yeah.
But really, like counting ceiling tiles or windows or how many blue things are in the room. Like,
And a learning process of as you're building up to a flip. If you find yourself regularly flipping in a certain situation, then coming up with an action plan ahead of time so that when that situation comes back up, you're already doing your grounding exercises, your regulation exercises previous to the activity that causes the emotional dysregulation.
Regulate?
You can. You can. So before, and I teach my families this. So before, like if you're about to do an activity that you know generally dysregulates you, you can do regulation activities, and it sort of like builds up the strength inside of you so that when I bump you, you can handle it. You can take in the sensory information, stay in the here and now, and then investigate. So yes, but you have to be curious about what's going on in your life and sort of keeping a track of those dysregulated moments so you can do that ahead of time. So I highly recommend sort of keeping a journal or keeping track of what it is that's causing you to get dysregulated.
It's kind of like putting on the full armor of God.
Yes. I like that. Ahead of time. Absolutely. Yes. Have a plan. I like that. Yeah. Well, Molly, are you ready for a recap?
I sure am.
Okay, let's do it.
So here's what I'm hearing, is that if you find yourself dysregulated on a consistent basis that sounds like it's from the bottom up, that there's something in your sensory area that is causing your smoke alarm, your amygdala to start firing, that it can be healed, that that's not how you have to stay, that it doesn't always have to be like that. And if it's been spoken over you, or if you've taken on this identity that this is going to trigger this and this is how I am, and if you find yourself having to manipulate your environments to make sure that you're safe, that that's not how God intended you to live, that he wants to be your guardian, that he wants to be the protector in your life, that you can't protect you, but man, he can. And he wants to set you free so that you're not constantly having to go about your day manipulating your environments to make sure that you're okay. But really, he wants to show you something. And he wants you to be set free from those things. And the brain, how it's created, means that it can be healed. It means that he wants to give you his narrative for whatever happened, that he can insert himself right into the middle so that your past doesn't have to invade your present, and that you can be on fire for whatever's to come next, for what his original design for your life is. And in the next couple of videos after this one, myself and Ann Nolan share on a deeper level just personal stories about some bottom-up anxiety. So until next time.
So now we're going to be talking about the bottom-up anxiety and trauma that we have, the PTSD type of trauma. And I left a cliffhanger sort of at the last episode because another crisis had come into my life. I had been going through for the last 2 years this journey of restoration and learning how to connect with God and putting the things and the structures in place, the community that I needed, the daily habits that I've been forming. And so I was more prepared for what was going to happen, which was this event. I don't know if I mentioned before, but the three of my children that I have, my oldest two are identical twin girls. And one night I got the unthinkable call in the middle of the night. My daughters were spending the night out and they were on the way home. And one of them had been sexually assaulted. And so she had been raped at a party. It was just the unimaginable, unspeakable horror, terror that no parent ever wants to hear. Unfortunately, it happens to 1 in 4 of us women. And
And I'm so grateful looking back at how God had just been pouring into me and building me and preparing me to be there for her during this time. But it was just the most unimaginable thing to be woken up and told that has happened. And so as we all gathered around her and loved her and prayed for her and did all of the things that we had to do in the first days and weeks of this kind of thing happening with the police and hospitals and crisis centers and all of that rigmarole, what I noticed in my daughter was that, and you probably just seen this last episode, you heard the story about Chirpy. Well, this was my daughter, is Chirpy. She had lost her sing. She is a beautiful, talented, loved, happy, loving, giving, athletic teenage girl with a world in front of her. Just, her future wide open, getting ready to graduate high school, embark on college and the rest of her life. And she was sleeping with me every night. She was waking up with the negative thought patterns, bad dreams and night terrors, everything. Usually sort of half glass full person was starting to wake up with negative half glass, the pessimistic thoughts. And I could just see the light in her eye just dimming. And I knew, having been prepared and walked through so much of this stuff with the No Boundaries team, that you start to develop habits. New habits are formed in your brain. You've got that clay sitting on a pottery wheel that is your brain. And as things come in like this that happen, that impact and change the shape of your brain, it could just totally and radically impact her for the rest of her life. The decisions that she would make, her ability to connect with others, relationships, potentially her marriage, her ability to be a parent, that she really did need to have healing, to meet Jesus in this, to be completely healed and restored so that she could get her song back, so that she could release all of this that she wasn't meant to carry, that she wasn't meant to be burdened with, so that she could live the abundant life. And I knew that it was imperative that she go ahead and walk through some of this healing sooner rather than later, so that new habits weren't formed and it would be easier to find restoration. And so even though I feel like the Lord had given me so many tools to help someone walk through this kind of healing, as a mom, it was way too close to home, and I didn't feel confident to do this on my own, and I really, really wanted the help of a community of people who had seen and done this before, and who could help lead us through that. So that's when I knew I needed to go get in contact with Dr. Lori and the No Boundaries group, and that we needed to fly out there and visit with them and spend some time with them, connecting and praying and seeking restoration.
So if bottom-up anxiety happens whenever something from the past triggers something in our brain, let me tell you about my experience in Nepal. So I went on my first international missions trip, and then, of course, with Dr. Lori and Sandy, they were like, let's go do something fun. So they're like, we're going to go paragliding off of the side of the Himalayan mountains. And me, loving adrenaline and loving fun, I was like, absolutely, this is exactly the moment that I was created for. It's this kind of thing that I'm going to live for and love, and it's going to be the best time ever, right? Right. So we go, we get there, and then you have a pilot who's like, has a whole bunch of stuff, and then he goes to clip me in to him because it's like a tandem jump. And he goes and he puts on these things over my feet, and I just was like, whoa, I didn't like that. I didn't like that. But he harnessed me in. But obviously I have to be harnessed in because we're about to jump off a mountain. So it'd be worse to not be, right? So he harnesses me in, we jump off, we fly around, we land, And then for the rest of the day, I just am so triggered by something and I can't figure out what. But I just didn't want to do anything, which is very odd because if you put me in a different country with new people and new things to see and experience that I've never seen or experienced before, it's really odd for me to not want to be right in the middle of that. So what happened is I chose to stay back at the hotel while the rest of the team went and did something. And then I sat down in the bed and I piled all of the pillows that I could find on top of me. And then I laid down and I turned off the lights and I was sitting there very, very, very still. Just as still as I could be. Until eventually another team member, after they got back, came in and she just laid right on top of me. Because I needed some sort of deep pressure, grounding, something. And then I never thought about it again. I didn't ask Jesus anything. I wasn't, I just thought, I don't know, something was just off. So then, let's say 3 years later, here we go, and Dr. Lori and Sandy, the other co-founder, are like, let's go rock climbing. And I'm like, okay, I've never been rock climbing. This should be fun. So we go in there, and this is 3 years later, you guys, 3 years. We go in, and they give you like some little shoes that look like ballet slippers, and then they give you like some chalk or something, and then they give you a harness. And so I went and I stepped into the harness and I could just feel it. I was like, something isn't right here. I hated it. I was like, it's too tight. I don't like the way it feels. I think I'm going to throw up. My body is sending all kinds of signals to me saying, you don't need to do this. Run, get out of here. This isn't safe, because my amygdala is firing saying, danger, danger, danger. The smoke alarm has been pulled and I have no idea what's happening. But because I've kind of gone through this stuff before, I got myself really quickly grounded. And I was like, hang on, I don't know what this is, but this isn't what's happening now. What's happening now. So the best thing you can do for an anxious brain is to feed it good information. So then I'm sitting there, I'm like, actually, like, I'm about to go rock climbing. This is going to be so much fun. The team is here. They love it. It's going to be incredible. And so I was quickly able to get back in the moment and get in the present, and just kind of made a little red flag mentally of like, this might be something that I need to address. So we went rock climbing. I loved it. And then guess what? That was it. I loved it. And I didn't address the thing that I said that I was going to address. So what happened was then I started having nightmares. Just crazy nightmares that I just couldn't figure out. And I couldn't sleep. And I was being tormented. And I would have this just reoccurring dream over and over again. And I had no idea what was going on. And so then finally I got into the community and I was like, you guys, I'm not sleeping well. I don't know what's happening. And Dr. Lori says, well, what's triggered this? Or how long have you been feeling like this? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, Jesus, how long have I been feeling like this? And I was like, oh, when I went to put on the harness, when we went rock climbing 3 weeks ago, because guess what? He wanted to heal it then. Actually, he wanted to heal it 3 years ago. And I was like, oh, is there something to this? And so we sat down and I was like, what is going on? And Jesus, like, what do we need to do? And then Dr. Lori's like, Molly, let's draw. So we sit down and I was like, let's draw the time that you felt this harness or this feeling or whatever was happening. And I drew my past. And I drew what was happening when I was in sexual exploitation and being trafficked and what the harness represented. And just the horrific things that happened with that was now invading my present. And so we sat there and I drew it, and at the end of it, she was like, okay, now let's draw Jesus into it. And I was like, okay. So I remember I drew him and he had like super, super long arms. And in my drawing, I had these short little like T-Rex arms, like not going anywhere, not about to do anything kind of arms. But Jesus, when I drew him, he had these super long arms. And all I kept hearing was, I have really long arms. My arms are so long. And so then I was like, Dr. Lori, he's just saying he's got really long arms, and look at how long they are. Like, they're all the way past the floor. Like, this is insane. And she was like, well, what does that mean? Like, can you ask him if there's anything else that he wants to tell you in this? And I was like, okay. So I asked him.
And he said, Molly, you were never out of reach. That his arms were long enough then and they're long enough now that I was never out of reach from him. And what happened was in my brain, because I hadn't healed that and because I didn't have any narrative to what had happened to me and I didn't know how to process because my brain was still activated at a midbrain level that I hadn't framed it out yet, that I didn't know what was going on. And so that had permission to come in. The things from my past had permission to come in and just attack me at any time it felt like there was perceived danger to keep me safe. But the thing is it didn't need to keep activating anymore. And so I had to sit with him, and I got to sit with him and get his narrative. And so now whenever I think about a harness, I'm not triggered by the things of the past. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm never out of reach of Jesus. I want to sit in every harness. I want to rock climb every mountain. I want to jump off of every mountain if that means that I can feel how close he is, because I'm never out of reach. And when I think about that now, I have his narrative. And it's been super fun. But that's just a little example of some bottom up when your past invades your present.